Physician-assisted suicide is the suicide of a patient suffering from an incurable disease, affected by the taking of lethal drugs provided by a doctor for this purpose. According to ebsco.host.com, assisted suicide is a controversial medical and ethical issue based on the question of whether, in certain situations, medical practitioners should be allowed to help patients actively determine the time and circumstances of their death. Assisted suicide is not legal everywhere, but in some places, including Montana, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington, and a few other countries around the world. While this is a controversial issue, it is supported by many people, including me, and it is working on getting legalized across the country. First, I'll talk about the positive outcomes of assisted suicide and how it could help many people that are unhappy. Then I'll talk about people's assisted suicide stories. Last, I'll talk about how assisted suicide is a controversial issue and how we could help people to understand it. First, I will discuss the positive outcomes of assisted suicide and how it could help many people who are unhappy. Assisted suicide could have many positive outcomes, and it could help people with a terminal illness who are living an unhappy life. Assisted suicide gives people that are terminally ill the choice to decide when they want to end their life. If they are suffering, it gives them the right to die with dignity. For example, if a person is terminally ill with cancer and they cannot do anything for themselves anymore, assisted suicide gives them the opportunity to end their suffering. If a person were in a coma and it's known that they aren't going to wake up, the person's guardian or power of attorney can decide to tell the physician to give lethal medication. This could help with not only the suffering of the family, but also with medical expenses. According to medscape.org, patients with serious illnesses wish to have control over their own bodies, their own lives, and concern about future physical and psychological distress. Now I will talk about people's assisted suicide stories. Assisted suicide has been done before by people in places that it is legalized. Here are some stories from people who have experienced someone around them getting assisted suicide. First is Brittany. Brittany Maynard is a 29-year-old that was diagnosed with an aggressive, fatal brain cancer. When the doctors gave her less than 6 months to live, she moved from her home in California to Oregon, where they have a death with dignity law. From WordPress.com. Brittany's courage to tell her story as she is dying and alert all Americans to the choice of death with dignity is selfless and heroic, said Compassion and Choices President Barbara Combs-Lee, an attorney, former ER and ICU nurse, and physician assistant who was an author of the Oregon Death with Dignity Law. Next, I have a story about a woman who has not been given lethal medication, but wants the option whenever it's her time. Jean Hopkins is an active 93-year-old woman. She is in good health for her age, but has told LeaderPost.com that when she starts to show signs of codependency, she wants to be able to die on her own terms. Lastly, I will discuss the moral issue on assisted suicide and why people should support it. Without assisted suicide, people may end their own lives in a way that can be very traumatic to their loved ones. Weebly.com says that the patient can die with dignity rather than being a shell of their former selves. Like I said earlier, medical treatments can be very expensive. Assisted suicide ends the unnecessary medical costs of a person that is terminally ill either way. VGAvirginia.org puts it perfectly when they say, serious health ailments and chronic or incurable diseases in particular can financially destroy a family. Now, let me summarize. Assisted suicide could ultimately make people more happy. Instead of suffering for a long period of time, dying can be a person's choice. Not only is it good for the patient, but also for family and friends.